They're not drag queens at an eccentric party on the savannah. They are the Bororo Pels of Niger, one of the most enigmatic peoples of Africa. Every year, at the end of the rainy season, the Bororo families come together to celebrate the Worso festival. They come with all their belongings since they are nomads. The Bororo are also known as the Wodaabe, which literally means the people of the taboo. The lives of these people are marked by strict traditional laws and by numerous prohibitions and magical beliefs. Being beautiful is an obligation. When their children are born, the mothers try to shape their babies' skulls by massaging them. Children should have a round and elegant head. Although we had been with them before, this narcissistic exhibition still surprised us. Children are instructed from an early age about body worship. Remaining thin is important. Their faces are tattooed with small marks that accentuate their features. The teeth and whites of their eyes should be bright. At these annual gatherings, the men show how beautiful they are in order to be chosen by the women. The matchmaker approaches them with instructions from the women, who observe the dance from a reasonable distance. This is when their gestures become more exaggerated. They roll their eyes, inflate their cheeks, bare their teeth, wrinkle their noses, and squint as much as possible. When a woman has made her decision, she approaches the man she has chosen and points at him while shouting, "Yahoo!" The origin of the Wodaabe is unclear, just like the origins of the other Fulani or Pel subgroups. Some scholars place them in Egypt, while others put them on the Sudanese plateaus. The truth is, they are physically very different from the rest of the ethnic groups that inhabit the region. Their legends talk about two ancestral brothers, Ali and Degarijo. The first 15 clans trace their origins back to them, although they later divided. Women are responsible for setting up the tents, which are very similar to those of their neighbors the Tuaregs, as well as organizing the campsite. They also set up the tables for displaying the gourds, the symbol of their wealth. Some men help with the hardest tasks, but most just tend the livestock. The Bororo women are easily recognized by their facial tattoos. Their pom-pom hairstyles with 2 braids on each side of their heads, which in magic signifies protection, as well as by their jewels, especially the large earrings they wear. They don't consider themselves to be black, but red. Periodically, they decorate and protect their gourds with red and white clay paint. The gourds are only exhibited on rare occasions, but at least once a year during the Worso festival. They are named according to their size and decorated with geometrical drawings, triangles, lines, half moons, suns. The designs, which are sometimes very elaborate, are passed on from generation to generation. In reality, they are protective talismans. People slowly arrive. It has been a long time since the men have seen each other. Their greetings are long and ceremonious. As soon as their children's hair starts to grow, mothers begin to braid it in the traditional manner. They will wear these braids their entire lives. At midday, all activity stops because the heat is unbearable. Under the acacias, we listened to their stories and got to know each other a little better. The celebrations are about to begin. At sunset, the men prepare for the dance. They paint their faces with ochre or red kaolin. They apply black coal around their eyes and mouths to highlight the whites of their eyes and the impeccable enamel of their teeth. A yellow line is drawn from their foreheads to their chins, which stylizes their faces. Finally, turbans and ostrich feathers are placed on their heads. Meanwhile, the women prepare large amounts of food for the evening banquet. The Wodaabe diet, like that of the rest of the Sahel nomads, is based on dairy products they get from cows or goat's milk. Rice and millet, which they get by trading with the Hausa or Yurma farming tribes, also form an essential part of their diet. Lamb is the main dish at the celebrations. It is one of the most surprising spectacles in Africa. The members of the different lineages line up in a row and compete to see who is the most beautiful in the eyes of the women. It is one of the few opportunities they have to find a partner outside of their circle of cousins. Normally, marriages are verbally agreed upon during childhood between families of the same lineage. We could not get over this unique manifestation of masculine arrogance and vanity. During his life, each man may have as many wives as he can support, but a woman may have only one husband. Every so often, the matchmaker approaches the group to indicate who has been chosen. They accentuate their gestures and expressions in his presence. Once the men have been identified, the women approach them. The dances begin spontaneously between the women and their chosen men. The spectators, many of them Tuaregs, join the group to celebrate the end of the Worso. The Tuaregs share this region with the Bororo in harmony, and so it is natural for them to attend each other's celebrations. The Yarol is held the next day. This is a longer dance where the affection shown at the beginning of the Worso can be turned into real marital commitment. The Wodabe were respectful and friendly to us the entire time, and they were delighted to be filmed by our cameras. Every night, we showed them what we had recorded. They became absorbed by the monitor until its battery ran out of power. The participants are dressed in a different way. They cover their heads with the typical Fulani hats, which protect them from the sun as they care for their oxen. Their face paint is now red, and they hang amulets over their naked chests. These are the Maagani, which make them beautiful. The Bororos are famous for their magic. Bororo medicine is highly valued. The Bororo witch doctors make remedies that they sell at all the markets in Eastern Africa. They have a behavioral code mainly based on 4 ethical principles. The Senteende, discretion and modesty. The Munyal, patience and strength. The Hakilo, attention and reflection. And the Boodal, the criteria of physical beauty. Our musician and composer, Santi Vega, studies the Wodabe voices, keys, and rhythms. He worked with them in order to create the soundtrack, but most importantly, he was able to become friends with this enigmatic people of the African Sahel. The highlands of Tibet are inhabited by traditional nomadic tribes. Most are shepherds constantly moving their herds. The Ando mainly breed sheep and goats, although they also have yacks. The Ando women paint their faces with lard in an extravagant manner. This is how they protect themselves from the sunlight. They are easily distinguished because of their brightly colored clothes, and because just like the men, they always cover their heads. Their camps are big, and usually 10 or more families settle together. That way they can help each other with the livestock. They live in different kinds of tents, normally lighter tents than the nomads who inhabit the areas located at higher altitudes. The most common kind of tent, however, is made from yak hair with white fabric patches that allow light to enter. They are spacious and bright inside, and a simple fireplace is located in the center, which is fueled by dried sheep and goat dung. Their eating habits are almost exactly the same as those of other nomadic groups of Tibet. During the communist era, the Ando were forced to become salaried shepherds since their herds were requisitioned. As a result, they acquired new customs, abandoning some of their traditional practices. Every morning, before heading to the mountains, they count their sheep. The Ando are highly sensitive to the ecology. They are masters of shepherding techniques, and before using up the pastures, they move somewhere else. The livestock only gives them milk during the summer. The goats give them milk for 4 months, and the sheep for 3, which is why they have to work hard in the summer to put up butter and cheese for the rest of the year. Tibet is one of the last remaining refuges for nomads. Its vast high plateau provides enough pasture to feed the many heads of livestock that they own. The altitude isolates them and prevents other people, like the Chinese, from settling on their lands. Here at the top of the world, only the strong who have adapted to the high altitude are able to live and develop their unique culture. The Kazakhs of northern Mongolia, nomads, cattle farmers, good horsemen, and the best of falconers. We found them in the Altai Mountains. It is the hunting season, and now more than ever, they spend all their time with their large eagles, which they care for as if they were their own children. According to traditional law, they can't hunt until after the first spring snowfall, which usually coincides with the month of October. If the snows are delayed, they call on the shamans to use their magic to bring the clouds and snow. From the highest mountain tops, they scan the horizon in search of prey, usually hares and fox. When a wolf appears, things are different. Wolves are the greatest predators of their livestock, and although their prized eagles might end up hurt, they send them into the air to finish the wolf off. The first few times they launch their birds each season, they usually fail. Their birds are stiff and sluggish after the long winter. They use female golden eagles to hunt since they are more aggressive. They weigh about 7 kilos and their wingspan is 2 meters. When they swoop down on their prey, they can reach speeds of 160 kilometers per hour. Their sight is 8 times keener than that of man. After the eagle captures its prey, the falconer arrives immediately to collect the prize. During the event, the fox's fur might be torn up, and even the bird herself may get hurt. As the season progresses, the falconers go up to the highest mountaintops, like this one, the Balkan Altai, at 3,900 meters above sea level. From above, they can see several valleys and sight the easiest prey. The Kazakhs are Muslim. They reached these lands around the 17th century, fleeing from tribal disputes. They inherited their falconry techniques from their Turkish ancestors over 1,000 years ago. They catch eagles with nets or climb up to their nests in order to capture their chicks. The training is slow. During the first month, the eagles remain inside the gur so that they get used to the smells and sounds. In the following weeks, they are taught to balance on the horseman's arm as he rides. The most difficult thing to teach them is to return to the arm of their master after being launched in the air. From the time they are captured, they spend all their time with their masters. They even sleep by their side. At the beginning of the hunting season, the Kazakhs feed their eagles cow's liver to boost their energy. Each bird can consume the equivalent of 2 cows per year. Gatherings inside the gur are frequent, around a good lamb cooked in the traditional way, while they talk about their hunting exploits, which naturally they exaggerate. They even make things up, just like everywhere else in the world. After the usual tea with yak lard and their treasured vodka, they sing traditional songs. The gathering lasts until late at night. Today is a competition day. The falconers remove the tomaga, or hood, from their eagles high up on the mountainside. First, they participate in several events, in which the birds have to catch a fox pelt that is dragged by a horseman. Their speed, style of flight, and precision all count. The falconers are dressed up in their best silk and fox fur hats, called kepes. They decorate them with owl feathers. The stripes symbolize the texts of the Quran. In the past, falconry was reserved for the elite, but today it is practiced by anyone who wants to. There are about 400 falconers in this region, but obviously those who are the best off have more than 1,000 head of cattle. These competitions are good for mixing with each other. In this region, in an area of more than 50,000 square kilometers, there are only 90,000 inhabitants, and the chances to get together are scarce, especially during the long winter. Between events, they usually play kukber, a traditional game that was prohibited during the Soviet occupation. The winning team is the one that takes control of the sheepskin and manages to put it in a particular place in their part of the field. Almost anything goes in this game. It's a sport that is played throughout Central Asia, although with different rules. Finally, the grand finale arrives. The participants have completed the fox fur event and will now compete with live prey. The eagle that reaches the fox first and catches it with her strong claws will be declared the winner. The Guyanese Massif, in the state of Bolivar in Venezuela, one of the most impressive landscapes in the world. Negotiating its rivers with their rapids and waterfalls was becoming a true gymkhana for us. It's a mysterious territory. The impenetrable rainforest, scored by innumerable rivers, is only interrupted by enormous plateaus sliced out of the land. Huge stone colossi from where hundreds of waterfalls plunge, among them the highest in the world, Angel Falls, which is almost 1 kilometer high. The water hits the ground, sprayed like rain, after traveling 979 meters from the crest of Ollantaytambo. Its name comes from the Venezuelan aviator Jimmy Angel, who crashed his small plane into the plateau, although its true discoverer was the Spanish explorer Felix Cardona in 1927. In this remote enclave, which inspired Arthur Conan Doyle in his novel The Lost World, we find the Sanama, one of the indigenous tribes inhabiting the area. The Sanama belong to the same ethnic group as the Yanomami of the Upper Orinoco. They are nomads like almost all the jungle peoples, although little by little they are becoming more sedentary because they have begun to farm the land. They grow tubers such as yams and cassava. Their acculturation is evident. Their habits and customs are impregnated with the surrounding culture. The women are in charge of tending the gardens, while the men are responsible for hunting. The cassava they harvest is poisonous. It contains hydrocyanic acid, which is why they have to process it to extract the poison in order to be able to eat it. After grating it, they place it in cylindrical containers made out of palm leaves, which they make themselves. Once full, they hang them in clever presses to drain the toxic liquid. The Sanama use tobacco on a daily basis. They moisten the leaves and blend them with ash. Then they wrap it into a ball, and both men and women place it between their teeth and lips. They suck on the nicotine all day long. Once the cassava flour has been drained, they remove it from the containers and finish drying it. They make cassava bread with the flour, the bread of the jungle and the main source of nourishment for these people, together with the meat the hunters get in the jungle. Like all the peoples who live in the forest, the Sanama are familiar with an infinite number of medicinal plants. The shamans get sacona, a powerful hallucinogen, from the bark of a tree that they call amai. Sacona is consumed fairly frequently. It is the way they communicate with the spirits of the forest. Before consuming the hallucinogenic substance, they decorate their bodies with anato. They each have their own design, which symbolizes a totemic animal. It is the animal they meet during their shamanic flights. They consume the sacona by inhaling it through their noses. The effects of the hallucinogen disappear quickly. The ritual chants and rhythmic movements are effective instruments to help them leave their bodies, thus opening the door that allows them to set their minds free and enter the kingdom of the jungle gods, as well as to see the future. With the protection they obtain during their shamanic flights, the men enter the jungle in hunting parties. Even the jaguar, which always stalks them, will respect them since they are under the protection of the jungle spirits. Some relatives from the Tuku River have reached the Sanama settlement. The obligatory greetings are a true ritual. 2 by 2, they begin to recite their family trees, and sometimes they go back as far as 20 generations. The monotony is always broken when visitors arrive. They prepare dances, games, and food for everyone. The warriors paint themselves with charcoal like they do when they wage war against other tribes. Challenging strangers is a deeply rooted custom, although only in a playful manner. The Sanama have always been and always will be warriors. Visitors enter the settlement with their bows raised. Other warriors are there waiting for them. The tips of the arrows are wrapped in banana tree leaves so they won't hurt anyone. It's only a welcoming ritual. They believe that after the world was created, the gods engaged in a cruel battle against the stars. Thus men were born from the drops of blood that fell to earth and mixed with the dust. That's why they are considered to have emerged from violence, which could explain why war and ritual combat are important to them. Daily life continues as slowly as always. The Sanama do the minimum amount of work necessary to eat and live comfortably in the settlement. They spend a lot of time lying idle or dedicated to simple, almost childish pastimes. Women spend hours delousing each other. When they find one of these parasites on their companion's head, they remove it from her scalp and kill it by biting it. The men have gathered around the shaman for a curing. They all consume sacona and sing incantations and the master's chants. They invoke the protective spirits so that they will come to help the sick child. They say that the child became ill because of a spell cast by a man from another settlement who courted this woman and was rejected. The shaman embraces him to extract the curse, and then he throws it out of the house. The Sanama are keen on celebrations. Any excuse is a good one to break the daily monotony. Women make skirts and headpieces with banana tree leaves by separating the veins and cutting them in half. There are 3,000 years of culture in these hands. Their mothers and their grandmothers and their great-grandmothers and their great-great-grandmothers and the women from the beginning of time, of the times of the jungle, also made these skirts. Men and women draw totemic paintings on their bodies with anato. They also wear big white feathers. It is a world that is disappearing, like so many other Amazonian cultures. One way or another, it will be wiped out, and with it, the wisdom of the jungles will be lost. Meanwhile, the bodies of the Sanama women will continue to show off the ceremonial feathers and invoke the protection of the jungle. We enter the Dolpo in northeastern Nepal, perhaps the most isolated and wildest territory on the planet, and the purest stronghold of the Tibetan religion. The Dolpo Pa, as its inhabitants are called, are cut off from the rest of the world. Their existence is harsh and merciless, and only made bearable by their deep religious faith. On their adobe homes, the prayer flags flutter on the roofs in eternal supplication. They represent the hope that there is something better after this life. Food is scarce at these altitudes, where farming is difficult. The harvests are so meager that they only provide enough food for 6 months. That's why the Dolpo Pa have to travel every year to exchange salt for barley and rice. In July, the women prepare large amounts of food for the long journey, as well as the sacks of salt that they will trade. It is the only time they can leave in caravans, before the snow closes the mountain passes at 5,000 meters above sea level. The journey lasts several weeks, and they have to return in September to harvest the single crop that grows on their poor lands. The baggage has to be well prepared so that nothing is lost. The caravan will have to travel through gorges and along dangerously steep slopes, bearing blizzards, hail, and ice-cold rain before reaching their destination. The caravan drivers conscientiously prepare the yacks. The Dolpo Pa's existence would be impossible without these highly prized animals. They are very strong and can handle this extreme climate and the altitude. They can even travel as high as 6,000 meters above sea level and carry 150 kilos. The domestication of these animals dates back to 2500 BC. Yak dung is used as fuel. The Dolpo make butter and ricotta-type cheeses with their milk. Their hair is used to make clothes for the winter. And in the end, trading with remote villages would be impossible without them. The head of the caravan places a sacred banner on the saddle of the guide animal, so it will protect them on their journey and keep danger at bay. Before departing, they recite a prayer to the protective Buddha and throw an offering of rice into the wind. The salt they transport comes from the Drogpa, who extract it from salty Lake Drabi in the Tibetan interior. 21 sacks of salt for 10 sacks of grain. The caravan departs. The women and small children stay behind with scarce provisions, which is all they have until the men return. Before going up the high mountains, they cross through the small villages of the Kimbu Valley. Until just a few years ago, it was almost impossible to get permission to reach the Dolpo. They lived in complete isolation. Theirs is an impenetrable world, which is still hard to reach because of the difficulty of the mountain passes at such high altitudes. Here, time seems to have stood still. The customs are just the same as they were centuries ago. We are truly in a lost world. Before the arduous ascent, the caravans stop at the She Monastery, one of the most important pilgrimage sites in Nepal. It is the last inhabited place for many, many kilometers. Lamaism is practiced here, heavily influenced by Bon, a Tibetan religion. Buddhism melded with these practices, bringing about Tibetan Lamaism. Bon is rooted in animism, in the worship of ancestral deities and spirits of nature. There is a white Bon and a black Bon, in clear reference to magic. The musk deer and the snow leopard still live here. And according to the Dolpo, this is also the home of the Hemo, a monstrous animal that is as big as the trees and has its lair in inaccessible caves. It is able to strip the hide off a yak with one swipe of its claws. This animal, the mythical Yeti, the abominable snowman, is one they fear. It has given a lot to contemporary literature. For the inhabitants of Dolpo, the Yeti exists and inhabits these mountains. As they approach Gandala Pass, the highest place on the route at almost 6,000 meters above sea level, the weather conditions get worse. The climate can change in just minutes. The Dolpo, although not very tall, are tough and tenacious and handle hardships that are almost unbearable for us. Sporadic encounters with shepherds from the lower lands take place during this time. They go in search of the caravans to trade salt for rice. Salt is extremely important for nomadic shepherds. Their livestock need it since the pastures in these regions lack minerals. Now the enormous yak, which can weigh up to 900 kilos, walk through the ice-cold snow. The members of the caravan have to pay close attention to the patches of ice. If the animals slip on the narrow trail, they may fall off the cliffs and die. Little by little, they begin the descent towards the turquoise lake. Sometimes going down is more dangerous than going up. Vegetation gradually begins to appear when they are below 5,000 meters in altitude. First, there is grass, then bushes, and finally trees and forests begin to appear. The nightmare of the heights seems to have ended, although they still have to go up and down a few more times, but not to such high altitudes. Upon reaching this point, the caravan stops for 2 or 3 days. They all need to rest, especially the animals. Now they can graze peacefully and recover their strength. Life seems to re-emerge after so much suffering. They have already traveled the worst 2/3 of the journey, but the return trip is still on everyone's mind. In less than 20 days, they will face the challenge of the mountains again. For the Dolpo, life is closely linked to nature. Animals, trees, rivers, and mountains are animate. They have spirits, just as the Dolpo do. The world is an eternal cycle of life and death, in which these spirits are reincarnated. When the Dolpo die, they return to this natural world. The body of the deceased is dismembered and placed on the top of a sacred mountain so that the vultures devour it. This way, they form part of nature again. Finally, they reach Foxumdo Lake at 3,600 meters above sea level. The waters look as if they've been dyed. They are an intense turquoise color. According to the Bon tradition, years ago there was a town where the lake is located today. The mountain demons had bewitched its inhabitants. One day, an important Buddhist saint arrived. His name was Ambava. He was pursuing the she-devil who ruled the spirits. In order to escape, she bought the silence of the village, giving them a highly valuable turquoise gem. Sambhava turned the turquoise into dung. So the inhabitants of the town confessed and revealed the hiding place of the evil woman. As a result, the evil woman provoked a huge flood in order to escape again. The entire town was covered in water, water the color of turquoise. They are the Dolpo on their eternal journey, a way of life of an archaic world. It seems impossible that it is contemporary with ours.